Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the WE Smooth Sentinel. But first off though, before I go any further, I gotta let you know that this was handed to me by WE actually at Blade Show West. I was there, I kind of looked at their table and looked at all the stuff that they had out and available these days, and this was one of the pieces that jumped out at me most, of just like, oh wow, this is really good, right? And so I talked to him there, and I told him, as always, I'm gonna talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, but they said, yeah, sure, here, take one. And they just handed it to me right there. So maybe it's not the best quality controlled one ever, although we kind of assume it has to be on the table. But regardless, doing my best not to let that affect the nature or the quality of my review, and that's where this guy came from. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. First off, let's go ahead and look at a ruler. What we see here is this guy's coming in just under 3 inches. So it's in a very legal category for a lot of folks, which is a beautiful thing. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2. And against the Spyderco Delica. So what we're going to see here is that this is actually very small on this dimension, most certainly. But in terms of absolute blade length, we're right around Delica territory. In terms of sharpened blade length, that is, we are much, much higher. Much higher. We are about 1/4 of an inch higher. This has more sharpened blade length than either of those guys. And in terms of the blade shape and size, it is in very many ways similar to the Ontario Rat number 2. Again, a little more sharpened length, but it's got that same some flat, some belly, nice tip to it going on. And in terms of actual size in the pocket, we see this is actually a little bit smaller than the Rat 2. This is a very compact knife in the pocket, which is a beautiful thing. And so it's a very nice little size. Next thing, this is the Smooth Sentinel. Note that there is not a rough Sentinel or a regular Sentinel. I gather it's just, this is the knife there. But there you go. There are, however, a couple of different variants. This one has a carbon fiber in there, but there were also micarta versions that I've seen, and I imagine knowing they'll probably have a couple other variants, and so there is that. But let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, I like this size a lot. I mean, look, you can consider this to be a source of bias, but I think that for a lot of people, 3 inches is right in that sweet spot, right? Because it's going to be, short enough that it's going to abide with a lot of the legal issues that you come up with in a lot of places. And of course, these laws are dumb, but at the same time, it can often be helpful to have something that slides into that Wow, guys, it's been a day. Slides in under that line. There we go. Beautiful. So that can be very nice. And it's also a size, though, that I think gives you enough, you can do a whole bunch, so to speak, with a 3-inch blade. You're not going to be like, oh my God, I can't cut through this. So I really do think this is a very nice size. And especially when it is so compact in the pocket, it makes it something that is really excellent for carry. This entire thing fits within the silhouette of the Rat 2 and is a little bit smaller still. And so as a result, this becomes something that's super easy to carry, which is nice. I also like seeing the options there. Although the carbon fiber is very attractive, so is a micarta variant, and so would other versions as well. Doing this kind of an approach with this inlay coupled with, which is almost borderline making this feel like a liner lock, but either way, it gives them a lot of options, and it also gives you potentially options to have something made after the fact. This with a bit of wood on it would be absolutely fire. So I hope we see something like that down the road. And one other thing that I like very much about this knife are the lines. The lines of the knife look very good. It is a very nicely designed looking piece, right? They don't credit a designer explicitly for it, but this is one of the more attractive pieces that I think WE's come up with in a little while here, and like I said, you can like the inlay, you can not, but it's very sterile, it's very smooth, it's very just clean, I think is my overall feeling of the knife. It is just very cleanly done. So I appreciate that. One other thing that I appreciate a little bit more than usual is actually the WE Knives logo here. I don't know whether this is the case for most of them, or maybe it's just the case next to the carbon fiber here, but that logo is just really nice, because it has a little bit of not the logo itself, that's fine, but it has just a little bit of luster on top of the carbon fiber, and as a result, it just feels very classy. I appreciate that very much, and the carbon fiber itself looks quite good here. This is, I believe, a marbled carbon fiber, and it's just excellent. So I gotta say, this logo is looking quite good on this particular knife, the way they've done it here. Next thing, the action on this guy is great. It's just very, very good. WE Knives is a company that has done great work with action, and one of the benefits of having a knife like this, where the majority of the back side here is the overlay here, is the inlay, I suppose, is that it's very difficult to put any pressure on the lock bar. So they can dial the detent in so it is perfect, and it is always perfect every time. This is one of the big advantages that bolster locks have over conventional frame locks, and I don't know whether I'm calling this a bolster lock necessarily, but it kind of feels like one, is that you're never going to be putting extra pressure on the lock bar, unlike, for instance, on a conventional frame lock. Do I have a conventional? Here we go. This is a conventional frame lock. This is from Artisan Cutlery, a Ray Laconical collaboration. But what we see here is, and this is actually a front flipper, so it's a little different, but it's very easy to rest your fingers on this bit, whereas on this guy, that's very difficult. And so that can be a very nice thing, and the action on it is just spectacular. It is very nice on the open, closes very smooth as well. Just a great action. This is a great little knife. Next thing, this is just super carryable. This knife carries like a river rock. I mean, it does have a little tiny bit of pocket pecker in the back here. Going to be packing on whatever's in your pocket, but it's well rounded. It's not that big and prominent. And it just carries so damn small. This guy comes in much, much smaller in the pocket than the Spyderco Delica, which is already a very small knife in the pocket. And you get a little bit more functional blade length out of it as a result. It is just good, good, good for carry. This guy drops into the pocket with a very deep carry. By the way, it's worth noting that the carry of this guy, this is the only thing going to be sticking out of your pocket because the pocket fabric comes all the way up to here. It's very nice in that way, and it's also a very lightweight knife. Put this down on the scale here, and what we're going to see is this guy comes in at about 2.1 ounces for about 3 inches of blade. That's very, very good. And so as a result, it's very thin as well on this dimension. It's very light, and it just carries very smoothly and very compactly. And this is just a super easy knife to carry. This is a piece that I could see just you put in your pocket and you don't think about it until you need it, in which case it's a great tool. So to me, at least, all of that is the good, is that it's super carryable with a great action. The WE logo is looking really nice next to this carbon fiber with that little bit of polish on there. It's got very nice lines. I like seeing different options, and the size is great. On the great side, to me, though, the blade here is just, whew, boy, is it nice. It is a great little blade because it is 20 CV is the blade steel, and that is one of the very best blade steels out there right now for pocket knives, which is great, but it is also a really great shape with some flat here with a little bit of belly with a nice pokey tip going on. It has relatively thin stock here, so it's not, completely overbuilt. It's not, 2 millimeter stock. Actually, it might be closer to 2. I'm sorry, it's not 3 or 4 millimeter stock. It's a completely reasonable stock thickness here. It comes down to a very nice thin edge down at the bottom here. And it's just great. It cuts really, really well. This is a really good quality cutting tool in the pocket. That's just excellently done. And so for me, the great part of this, as I think should be the great part of a lot of great knives, is the blade. It's just a really good, thin, sterile, full, flat ground, thin stock. Oh, yes. In 20 CV, it is an "oh, yes," by the way. That is what that sentence implied. This is an excellent "oh, yes." 100%, I love this blade. So to me, that's what's great. This blade is amazing. Bad side. Price here is a little bit on the air side. It's not terrible, but it's also not great either. You're looking at $180 right now for the ones with micarta, and for this guy configured as it is on the table, $205. And is that terrible? No, not really. There's a lot of knife that's much higher than that. But at the same time, I kind of wish when WE was a company that was really aggressively pushing prices down, right? There were a lot of comparable pieces at $205. And so as a result, a knife that is substantially good ends up feeling a little bit closer to the middle of the pack. Whereas had they tried to price this guy in at like $175 or something like that, this would be way more compelling. So I really feel like WE needs to get back in touch with their early days of really pushing price because, it'll just make their stuff stand out a great deal more. So there's that. Next thing, the inlays on this guy are very attractive, but they're not super tightly fit. If I kind of zoom in here, what you're going to see is there are kind of, the inlay is proud of the rest of the handle material in most of the places on this knife. Right back here, you can see there's a little bit of gap right up here. Yeah, exactly. There's little tiny bits of gaption right over here, right over here. And, okay, is it the end of the world? No, not particularly, but it definitely doesn't have that seamless feeling that a lot of inlays do. And as a result, that's a little bit less impressive, especially as you start pushing up past $200. Like, I don't know about that. So that's definitely an issue. And actually, speaking of the inlay, This little surface right here on the edge of the inlay is not broken particularly, or at least if it is, it isn't done so in a meaningful way. And so I would like to see them have rounded this little bit off, because that does actually present an ergonomic hotspot, because you are gripping the knife and your finger is going to be going right here. So this little sharp edge here is definitely something that I would round off. If this were a knife I was keeping in the long term, I might put this guy underwater and sand that down a little bit to round that corner, because I think it would just make it a little bit more comfortable in the hand. Next thing, speaking of the lock bar, the only thing that's not smooth on this knife is this lock bar cutout here. And I get that they might not have been wanting to do too much in the way of internal milling on the guy, because there is no internal milling otherwise, but it would have been more compelling had these little cutouts been on the inside of the knife rather than on the outside. Let's see here. Do I have an internally milled? I do not at the moment. But anyways, nonetheless, they could have done these guys on the inside, and this would have just made this much more smooth, because unfortunately, as you're pocketing this, these three guys kind of grab onto your pocket a little bit. And it also just feels a little bit ergonomically less than ideal. I feel like this would have been nicer with these guys rounded, on the inside rather than on the outside, leaving this to be a completely smooth Sentinel. And then finally, on the bad side, and probably the worst part of this knife, is going to be the clip here is just not ergonomically super great, right? The clip is definitely the weakest part of this knife, because there are a couple of little issues with it. I mean, to start with, it's actually not countersunk. You can see the clip is, although the screws that they're using are flat on the top there, this clip is sticking up proud of the actual carbon fiber of the knife, and I kind of get that, because that would allows them to do this on the other side here. It'd be very difficult for them to countersink it with this screw being directly under the clip, but at the same time, it does stick up a little bit more than it might have otherwise needed to. And then it also has this ramp, which, although they flatten it off a little bit at the top, you definitely feel the clip being relatively thin on the knife, as well as being oriented differently, just means that you are 100% feeling this clip if you grip hard onto this knife. And so as a result, the clip is definitely an ergonomic loss. I feel like they could have done this clip a little bit differently, and in fact, I kind of hope they go back and do that, because otherwise, especially if you were to move this inside and then rework the clip so it's maybe a little bit wider, or it fits the contour of the knife a little better, this would be even better. This is a very nice knife as it stands, but it could be an even better knife. And so I'd like to see them take that extra time and make that a thing. In a lot of ways, the clip on this knife feels a little bit like an afterthought, and unfortunately, it detracts from the overall quality here. This would be an absolute, oh my god, hit out of the park with a slightly different clip, but as it stands, they could do better. It's not terrible, by the way. I'm kind of nitpicking here. The knife is substantially excellent, but that clip is the one area where they kind of dropped the ball. So, to me, all of that is the bad, is that this clip isn't ergonomically strong. The carbon fiber inlay doesn't feel that great. The cutouts on the lock bar feel like they belong on the inside. The inlays aren't super well fit, and the price is not super strong, pushing the value. Nothing really ugly here. I don't think the clip gets to that point. It's the worst part of a knife that's otherwise really great. And so we can go to the final conclusion, which is that this is a knife that is otherwise really great, right? It's a great little knife, because it's got a nice size, nice options, nice lines, a super action, great carryable form factor, and a really nice blade. The price is kind of, whatever. Inlay fit isn't amazing. Lock bar cutouts are weird. The inlay itself could be rounded off a little bit right in this area, and the clip is definitely a weak point, but honestly, I kind of carrying this guy and handling it and such, this is a reminder of how good knives have gotten in the last 6, 7 to 10 years, right? I remember in 2017, if somebody had handed me this knife, it would have been like, oh my God, this is a beacon of amazingness from the future. I would be completely like, $500, take my money. And in 2021, my biggest impression from it is like, yeah, this is really good, but the clip could be better. And that's kind of cool, frankly, right? And I think we and Rayot and folks like that have had a major part in that change, right? In that shift of perception, where at this point, damn near perfect isn't quite good enough. It needs to be actually perfect. And I think that's kind of neat, right? There is absolutely room for a few tweaks here. And it's not exactly, gonna clear its orbit in terms of design and otherwise, right? There are a lot of new releases from WE like every damn day, it feels like. And so I think a lot of people might pass this one by, but I gotta say, it is really, really good. Could be better, but it's great. And walking around the table at Blade West, this was probably the one that jumped out at me most. This is the one that made me think, you know what? Yeah, I should get one of these guys on the table for review. Yeah, I think this has a really good chance of being a gem. And indeed, I think it's a gem. In practice, it's just really, really good. They could do little things, but it is very, very solid because you're getting something that is relatively small, which for me is a pro. Certainly, this isn't going to be for everybody in that way, but it's also very thin. It's very carryable. It's intensely good, and the blade on this guy, the blade is just so excellent. I really, really like many, many aspects of this knife, and as a result, this just feels like a big hit for WE. I don't know if they're going to keep it around. They have an unfortunate habit of killing some of their very best releases, but at the same time, I think this is a piece that you really should look at. If you're looking for something that is relatively small, that is smooth and very, very carryable, and that has a great utilitarian blade with a great action, this is good. This is really, really good. It's going to serve you well. And so, like I said, if you're looking for a thin, everyday carry knife, then honestly, you should be the one keeping an eye out for this Sentinel. Because usually they're watching. You'll be hit by the Smooth Sentinel. Eddie, you okay with that reference? Probably not, unless you're over the age of 35 or something like that. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you. Really well done, WE. I love seeing these kinds of subtle pieces that are a little bit different from what else is in the lineup, but doing everything else right. And a version 2 of the Smooth Sentinel, doing something here, oh man, that would be absolutely a world beater. And I hope that they do give this design that it's due, so to speak, and keep it around and, continue the tweaking and the improvement and all that kind of thing. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.